Hi, this is Stu Bruce from Washington College. I'm going to do a lab demo of Module C of our 3D terrain lesson. First thing you're going to need to do is to bring in the buildings for Chestertown. And then we're going to add a 3D surface that we can use to float everything on that. And then we're going to bring over a aerial base map. So that's what you should see. Might take a second for the aerial to come on. All right, once you have everything loaded, the 3D surface that we're using is a result of some previous work that we did. We can spin that around and kind of see what's going on. You don't actually need to see the 3D surface. You just have to have the file loaded. So we can go ahead and turn that off. And then we'll go ahead and turn on our aerial image. Now, if you go into Properties for your aerial base map, I'm going to double click on that to open up the properties. You want to go to the Base Heights tab. And in base heights, what we want to do is we want to float that aerial image on a custom surface. The custom surface will actually be the 3D surface that we brought in. Now, if I go ahead and clicked OK now, which I'll do just to show you, what we're going to see is that we hardly notice any change in elevation. That's because Chestertown's relatively flat, varying from about 0 meters here at the river to about 23 meters at the top. So if we really want to see some change, we want to exaggerate. So we can exaggerate this to 4 and click OK. And now we can start to see some elevation change, although it's really not very noticeable. I think for this particular case, an exaggeration of 10 will give us a little bit better viewing. So at 10 now I can actually see some of the changes. Now notice that underneath we have our basically our building layer. So if we want to float our building layer on top of that surface, then we have to go into the buildings, go back to base heights again, and then we'll float the buildings on the same 3D surface, and we'll give it the same vertical exaggeration of 10. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll take a look at the results. So now I've flipped this around and I can see my buildings. Now we do have an issue when we zoom in on the buildings. What you'll notice is that there's a conflict in drawing between some of the buildings and the aerial image. So you can kind of see that in a couple spots where it's sort of conflicted on what to draw. Now what you can do is you can go back to your buildings, give it a slightly more vertical exaggeration. We'll try 10.5. And then when we do that, the issue of the buildings conflicting with the aerials is disappeared. But if you go in and look at it, what you'll notice is that we might have done that a little bit too much, because we kind of have, see if I can zoom in here to show you a little bit better. We have our buildings really floating perhaps a little bit too high above the aerials. So we might want to not go with 10.5. I'm going to try 10.1 and see what that looks like. So we go to 10.1, you'll see the change immediately. It should drop in closer. So now it looks a little bit better. Although we still have a couple spots like here, for example, that's wiped out. Now, if we go ahead and extrude the buildings, so if we go to our extrusion tab, and we're going to extrude, remember this is all in meters, so I'm going to go 5 meters, be about 25 feet or so. We click OK, and then this problem of confliction will disappear due to the height of the buildings. So that's pretty much all there is to it. And you can kind of play around with this a little bit to get the optimal height and so forth. You can still go in and do a classification. If you want to add some variety, you can do a categories, unique values type, add all our values, and this will give us a little bit of variation there. The other thing, just like you learned earlier, if you look at the aerial imagery here, it's really kind of pixelated. So we can go into the aerial base, we can go into the rendering tab, and we can go ahead and, I'm just going to up at 1 here. I actually had a much higher resolution image. However, it was so huge that it would have been difficult to download, so I degraded the image and made it a JPEG. So we'll hit OK here. It might take a second or two, but actually that worked out pretty fast. So once you're done, go ahead and pick a scene from here, and you can do a screen export. And then, of course, you can do what I always love to do here is you can fly through your scene. And I'm going to do this really quickly, and I'm probably going to crash and die, but you sort of get the idea. It's really kind of fun to try to fly in between the buildings, right down the streets, without hitting anything, uh, which obviously I failed to do. So I hope you enjoy this lesson, and again, keep thinking about your 3D project and how that might work for you. Thanks.